Alright, let's drop all the political hyperbole for about 30 seconds, okay? Let's drop all the dumbass buzzword political jargon here. Because being left wing, right wing, cis, trans, black, mixed race, gay, bi, straight, religious or non religious, those facets of the discussion have never been the issue. And I would very much appreciate it if you would just learn to drop those things from the issue because they've never once been relevant. Me questioning your status as an individual in terms of your transgenderism has nothing at all to do with dismissing the existence of trans people or disliking trans people for existing. The reason I question whether or not you're trans is because you constantly try to make it an excuse as to why I can't be allowed to say, I don't believe that you are, because it seems like you picked up the identity of like a fucking costume to where whenever people ask you a question that you don't like, you'll just say, well, I'm this, and you saying this is bullying me, therefore you're bigoted. Knock that shit off. Knock it off. Misrepresenting what I say, stealing my audio, and then lying about the things I say isn't gonna win you any friends. You're not gonna wake up one day and be surrounded by millions of doting fans who hang on every word you say. You're not. You never will be. All it means is that you're just lying as hard as you can, hoping someone believes you and comes after me over some stupid nonsense you made up. Now, I'm going to say this in the most simple way I can, so that you may be able to understand me. My issue with you isn't as simple as disagreeing with your opinions. I do disagree with some of your opinions because some of them are very dangerous to people who may be vulnerable individuals in a society, namely women, children, animals, and the elderly, the four most vulnerable groups in society in terms of the most likely to be victims of crimes. My issue stems from the fact that the way you conduct yourself when espousing your beliefs is based entirely upon the principle of, I say this, you must believe me, or you're a liar, or you're this, or you're that, or you're this, or you're that, and you carry on this entire fucking facade of being some sort of activist. You're not an activist. You're a slacktivist. You pretend to care about a problem or a situation just to try to mooch whatever bullshit you can from it and try to make it seem like the world needs to somehow be in the center of this little bullshit you've started with people. It doesn't. You said some horrible things. People said the things you were saying were horrible. And then you went out of your way to lie and complain and bitch and say that anyone that questions your ideas even for an instant automatically becomes a right-wing Christian Nazi. Because that's the only way you can... That's the only way your brain can reconcile reality and your personal views, is that your views must be right even if reality openly conflicts with them. You're the kind of person who's so detached from reality that your only way to exist is just to say everyone else is a lying dick. Like, internet bullshit aside, you have the right to say you're ignorant shit, but people also have the right to contest it, and for some reason you have this delusion in your head that no one may challenge you. If you wish to engage in public dialogue and public discourse, you are therefore then subject to the scrutiny and ridicule that people will most likely place you under when you decide to say a bunch of ignorant shit and don't prove any of it. I mean, if you simply say, I believe this, okay, do you have any papers that can prove this? Well, I wrote papers. Okay, so we're supposed to believe you on the basis that you say, 'cause I say so. No, that's not how people handle things. Like, nobody walks up and says, believe me 'cause I say so. Because 'cause I say so doesn't mean anything to anyone except you. Because you're the one saying so. It's the same reason that if someone makes a claim that they have a unicorn in their backyard, but you can't come to the yard to see it, you're obviously not going to believe the person because it sounds like they're fucking lying, or maybe they're just fucking crazy. And with you, it seems to be a combination of the former and the latter. I mean, if we put all that bullshit to the side, like, I'm just gonna put away all the personal petty shit you do and just push it off into the fucking corner for a minute. The issue I have Like, if you take away all the personal shit, it's the fact that when you're disagreed with, your only response to it is to attack people for disagreeing with you. You don't try to evaluate anyone's sources, you just decide that they're wrong by default. And then anyone that actually can attest to these things being harmful because they can prove that they've been through this shit, they can give their own anecdotes about how badly they were affected by it down the road. How much it like altered the course of their life afterwards because everything that they went through had changed them and made them a different person in the worst way possible because it might have given them addiction problems or difficulty coping with stressful situations. Because a stressful situation might sometimes force them to regress back to moments where they remember their abuse, and then it puts them in a situation where they're almost catatonic. My issue is, like, you attack people because they went through shit like that, and then you basically just accuse them all of being a bunch of fraudsters that lied for attention. The only person that seems to lie for attention is you. Because you constantly say, well, I am being bullied, I am being persecuted, I am being blah blah blah. You're not being persecuted, you're being criticized. When someone says, I believe your ideas are stupid and dangerous and could cause people to get hurt, that is not other people trying to prevent you from speaking. That is not people trying to silence you. That is a person publicly voicing their concern in regards to your actions and the things you say. I would like very much for you to just stop playing this retarded ass game where it's like, I don't know what I'm saying. I don't know what I'm saying could be perceived as bad. If you start looking at it and applying all the real life consequences to these things being made real, all that matters is I think I'm right. And then you try to act like people that are upset with that are being unreasonable assholes. They're not being unreasonable. People's concerns are very valid when you go around saying that you don't think it's a bad thing for someone to be a fucking sexual predator. You have no issue with people committing. Let's see how. I don't want to I don't want this video to get fucking. You know what? I'm just gonna say it. You have no problem with people committing rape on people. You have no problem with people molesting children, whether it be people that they're related to or strangers. You have no problem with people fucking animals. You have no problem with people taking advantage of their elderly relatives or taking advantage of their younger, weaker siblings, or their siblings who might be physically weaker or mentally underdeveloped so they can't perceive what's going on with them or truly understand the repercussions of it. Like, you'd be the kind of person that I believe that if you actually had a position of real power, like if you were a teacher or a caregiver at one of these like schools or facilities for disabled children or disabled adults, I am very afraid that if you did possess one of these positions where you had unlimited access to people who are mentally disabled or physically disabled, I do very, very, very firmly, I do believe that you would take advantage of someone if you were given the opportunity. I do. And I'm not trying to say this to be an asshole. I'm not saying this to be insinuated. I'm not trying to use this as like a gotcha. I'm not trying to be inflammatory or saying it flippantly. I am very deeply concerned for anyone around you who may be unable to fend off any of your unwanted advances, whether it be physical or verbal, when it comes down to you trying to initiate some sort of encounter with them against their permission or without them understanding what's going on. Because to me, you strike me as the kind of person that is a predator. You do. And the reason you do is because every single time something's going on where someone looks like they're vulnerable or maybe easy to condition, you're immediately like, right there. You're like right there on their ass immediately, trying to convince them that you can help them and that you have all the solutions to everything. You're not doing it because you want to be someone's friend and offer them advice. You're doing it because you're hoping that someone is easy to persuade into believing the things you believe and doing the things that you would do. I don't think, even for a minute, that you do anything out of the goodness of your heart. I think you just do things because you find it to be the easiest way to get an in with someone is just to start sucking them off religiously and doing whatever you can to get them to believe that you're on their side, even if all of your interests are just your personal interest. I do firmly believe that if you had a position of authority, you'd take advantage of people every time you could, even if it meant other people would suffer in the long run on account of your behavior. The four most vulnerable types of individuals in society are women, children, elderly, and animals. And you've openly stated opinions that suggest that these four groups of people well, 3 groups of people and animals, that these 4 groups would be under greater threat if someone like you was given a position of authority where you could just make certain things legal because you would feel as though it's no longer an issue to you. Let's be honest, if people like you were in power, you would legalize rape, you'd legalize pedophilia, you'd legalize molesting kids, you'd legalize people committing molestation and rape on their family members and raping animals. And if anyone were to raise their voice in opposition, I think you'd have them executed or arrested, just on the general principle that they're voicing concerns about what you're saying. I mean, you've already displayed this in your own writing, where you say that you're going to get people arrested because they don't like you, or because they have, like, very valid concerns. About things that you've said. Sorry, I had to clear my notifications. I had like a bunch of texts that were just sitting there. But the fact is, you're the kind of person that strikes me as a political dissident who would get people arrested or thrown in prison or maybe even killed because they say, I don't think that this is okay, because you're putting people in a position where they could be hurt worse and more likely without any sort of pushback from law enforcement or the public, without the public being punished or without law enforcement being disbarred or disavowed for opposing the things that you do. And don't say it's because you're X, Y, and Z. It's not. It's because some of the things that you say could be dangerous to people who may not be able to defend themselves from an attacker. You're the kind of person that if someone was caught committing a rape on somebody and the people nearby grabbed that fucker up and beat him to death for trying to rape somebody, like, you'd punish the people who killed the rapist, but you wouldn't say, well, I understand that why you did it. I don't agree with the measures that you took because you still killed another person. But I understand why it is you felt like this person deserved it. You'd be the kind of person where if you were the judge and the jury, like, just straight up dismissed the case and found him not guilty of any of the charges because they ruled it to be necessary to protect someone else, you're the kind of person that if you were the judge, you'd stand up and say, no, I make the rules, I make the rules, I make the rules, I overturn. But you can't overturn because the jury's decided this person's innocence. And then you'd be throwing a fucking tantrum, stamping your feet and shitting down your pant legs, demanding the person be arrested for killing a rapist because you personally don't see anything wrong with a person committing rape. That's the kind of person you are through and through. You try to punish people because they say that a person's actions would warrant punishment when those actions hurt other people in a completely indefensible way. You do strike me as a predator because you condone shit like that, and because a lot of the things that you write about in your own books more or less lean that way, where it shows you hovering around people who might be not well in the head or might be unable to defend themselves if you insist that you want to have some kind of encounter with them. But the fact is, when you carry yourself in such a manner where it's like, it doesn't matter what the experts say because I decide, okay, so if people can't listen to the experts, why should they listen to you? Why should you be listened to if everything you say is just, I say so, so I must be right? I don't believe I'm right. I believe the experts are right, for example. And the experts say things that openly align with things that I can already assume are right. That's not me saying I'm right, therefore the experts agree. I'm saying I already believe this already, and the experts backing it up without even knowing I even exist more or less proves my opinion to be correct because my opinion is actually coinciding with what's actually true in reality. As opposed to your opinion, where your opinion is it doesn't matter if someone else believes it to be true, even if evidence confirms it, because you've decided the truth is whatever you decide it to be, instead of what's actually reflected by reality. People cannot respect you as an individual because all of your activities and all your behaviors are more or less based upon the principle that you must be right because you say so. You handle things in such a childish, brain-dead way that it's hard to take anything you say seriously because every time you utter a single fucking sentence that you utter, it's always some bullshit contrarian nonsense about how everyone else must be wrong because you need to be right. And that's not respectable. It's not something that a person can look at and say, yes, this is the kind of person who I want to ally myself with. The kind of person who's going to constantly advocate for rape and say everyone else is a dumb asshole that doesn't agree with him. No, this is the kind of shit people look at and say, fuck you, I want nothing to do with you. Like, this is going to be the kind of shit that's going to happen. People are just going to say, fuck off, I want nothing to do with you, and walk away. There's a reason you find yourself in situations where you're constantly homeless and alone. It's because you're constantly looking for people who can agree with you, but no one ever does. The reason you get thrown out of every place you ever live in is because you say awful things that are very alarming to most people. So what happens is they just decide not to have any association with you and kick you the fuck out because they realize the things you're saying could be very distressing and upsetting to most rational human beings. And the fact that you don't acknowledge that because you want to always be right says a lot about your character. It says that you don't understand what you're saying at all because you're just saying things that you've basically programmed yourself into saying as a defense mechanism whenever you're criticized about something. When you have like a 3-word response to everything someone says by saying, that doesn't exist, that's fake news, you're just conservative. Like, these 3 things are not intelligent rebuttals to people's concerns. They are dismissals of people's concerns. Because you don't actually know how to issue a rebuttal. You're just dismissing what people say because to you that's the easiest way to carry on with your day. Is just say, I choose it doesn't exist, therefore it doesn't, therefore you're a liar, and then you walk away thinking that you've outsmarted them. You haven't outsmarted anyone. If anything, you've said things that concerns people and makes them wonder if you're mentally sound, because when your only way to handle a concern is just to blatantly say everyone else is a lying asshole or everyone else is stupid, well, that doesn't make you look like you know what you're talking about. It just makes you look like another crazy bastard who's saying insane shit under the guise that saying insane shit will somehow make everyone like him. It just doesn't. And the reason it doesn't is because every time you post something like this, it's always the same fucking juvenile kindergarten response to everything, where you basically just say, I know you are, but what am I? And when people do it ironically to make fun of you, you think they're being serious because you lack so much self-awareness that you constantly try to act like everyone else is just a dumbass for doing the same shit you do to them, except they're doing it to make fun of you. You do it because you're serious. Because you just don't understand what people are doing. There is no reason for anyone to respect a person who acts like you do because you don't know how to handle any scrutiny because you like to always believe that you're right, to the point where you'll walk up and harass people if they believe otherwise. I just legitimately don't understand what the fuck your deal is, though. Because a lot of it just seems to be like personal ass hurt. It's like, well, you said mean things about me, and you say fucked up things about other people all the time. Mostly about the things they go through, the things they've done in their life that's none of your fucking business, and the things that you accuse people of with no proof because it's convenient for you to accuse people so that people don't look at you. I mean, you straight up accused me of domestic violence with literally no proof, all because I hurt your feelings on the internet, so yeah. You can shut the fuck up with the whole, you said me words. Yeah, but I never once accused you of anything that you didn't do. I've made speculations and guesses based on some shit that you did about how you might be offline, but those are guesses, and I've openly said I'm guessing. Whereas you straight up tried to make an accusation with no proof at all in hopes that someone would do something on your behalf, possibly endangering this person. Not to mention the fact that if those accusations you made were true, that person would be in more danger because then the person that you're accusing of abusing them would most likely be more violent as a way to keep them quiet. Such as the pattern with actual abusers. You would know this if you actually took any time at all to understand how those sorts of relationship dynamics work. Because if you actually understood those things, you'd be far better equipped to actually help someone in those situations. I mean, Professor Curious said this, and I'm just gonna repeat what he said because he said it best. You didn't mention this person possibly being abused because you wanted some sort of help for them. You mentioned this person being abused in hopes that someone would come up to me and attack me over it, or Because you're hoping that something happens to this person that you can then blame me for and claim that it was just the abuse intensifying, when the reality is most of the shit that you claim happened never happened. And the stuff that did happen didn't happen in the exact context that we were trying to imply it. And what I'm referring to is things outside of my relationship that occurred previously to me meeting Kate, that occurred years before then. And I don't need to explain myself to someone who's just going to decide that they know the truth either way. So there's no point in explaining something to you if you're just going to automatically decide that I can't be telling the truth because I shouldn't be telling the truth. Because otherwise it makes too much sense for people around me, and then you start to look crazy, so you have to default to the whole he must be lying thing. Which seems to be like your default reaction to like anything anyone says ever. Is just to assume that anyone that isn't immediately shitting on me or calling me a bigot or whatever day of the week that is must be lying. Because that seems to be like the only way you can just believe something without freaking out about it. Is by just constantly asserting that the other person must be lying, because that's the only way that makes sense for you. That's the only way that the world makes sense, if you just keep assuming that everyone else is just being a lying dick. Like, that's like the only way the world makes sense to you, if you just keep saying, well, they must be lying because I can't be wrong. No, you're wrong, and people are not lying. And it's no one else's fault that you're so damn dumb that a person will point out that what you're saying is fucked up, and they'll just go out of your way to lie about them continuously anyway, because it's the only way for you to feel like you're totally not wasting your fucking time being an antagonistic little shit to everyone. You bring it upon your fucking self at every given chance you get. And then at the same time you want to throw a tantrum about fucking nothing. Because you get off on lecturing people about what is and isn't true. I don't know what for. It's not like you've done anything worthwhile. You have done fuck all to really give people confidence in your ability to tell the truth. You've never been truthful to anyone. And when you do tell the truth, you tell it in very small doses, which are like bite-sized pieces, where you try to feed people just enough information so that they won't respond to you with negativity, whilst at the same time you refuse to tell people the whole truth because you realize that if you tell people the whole truth, you'll look shitty. So what you do instead is you try to tell people just enough so that they will be prompted to listen to only what you want them to, even though the things that you're trying to encourage them to believe are just a bunch of bullshit that you made up, because that's the only way for you to feel like you're not wasting your own time. Like, that's the only way you feel good about yourself, is just constantly being an antagonistic little shit to everyone in the room. Like, that's the only way at all that you seem to interact with anyone. Is that you follow people around like a fucking tapeworm, trying your hardest to make it so that anyone that questions you at all is automatically viewed as a liar. And yet you're trying to convince other people that they should feel bad because of the things that you do. No one feels bad for you. They feel bad for the other people that are stuck dealing with you. Because anyone that's ever dealt with someone like you knows that individuals like you who behave the way that you do are always just constant, whiny, attention-starved dipshits trying to make the world more difficult for other people, because that's how they get people to acknowledge them. They do whatever they can to be annoying and shitty because they know that's the only way for people to really pay them any mind, is just to keep screaming until someone looks at them. And it would almost be something deserving pity if it weren't for the fact that you're always trying to shout down other people and stop them from speaking, because you've decided that you're more of an expert about their lives than they are. To the degree in which you'll literally just attack people for disagreeing with you, And you'll try to cause them some sort of personal or professional discomfort or issue because that's the only way for you to feel like you're getting what you feel is justified retaliation for being called an idiot. You have no right to complain about people insulting you because you insult other people all the fucking time to the degree that no one can stand being around you, because anyone that ever tries to contest your opinion will automatically be shouted down and berated for doing so. You claim you're like, I respect humanity, I care about humanity. No, you don't. You don't care about humanity because you constantly excuse other people doing horrible acts against those who cannot defend themselves, or those who are unable to defend themselves because they don't possess the protections or societal defenses that they are normally given under conventional circumstances. You don't really care about what happens to other people. You care about being able to exploit the fact that other people exist so that you can just use them for your own purposes and then throw them away when you get bored. People like you are not that hard to figure out. I don't know why it is you try to act like you're some sort of 5,000 IQ individual who can never be challenged. Because you're not. You're not a genius. You're not some clever wizard that's outwitting everyone. You're just a drooling spaz that seems to think that your personal views on every matter that you have any sort of opinion in must be true because they're your beliefs. Just because you believe something does not make it true. I've said this before, and I will continue to say it, because apparently that part of that fucking bitter pill, you're just not able to swallow it because you keep vomiting it back up and then throwing it at the person that keeps handing it to you. You having the right to say something doesn't mean it's right to say. And that's the part you don't seem to get. And before you say, well, if you support free speech, it means everything should be said. Yeah. But that also means that I should be allowed to insult you and rebuttal you as well. If you want to be allowed to speak, you are also saying that other people should be allowed to discredit you, laugh at you, and make fun of you if the things you're saying are dumb or ignorant or just wrong. Which is their right as a person to question and disagree with the dumb shit you say, especially if it's proven to be faulty. Like, I genuinely feel bad for anyone that has dealt with you in any sort of capacity in their personal lives, because it means they'd constantly be subjected to the gaslighting, the emotional manipulation, the guilt tripping. Like, to me, this is just my opinion, but to me, you seem like the kind of person where if you actually had some sort of romantic relationship with someone, and this person wanted to leave for whatever reason, maybe they just didn't feel comfortable being around you, maybe the relationship didn't work out, maybe you guys just had some sort of falling out, maybe they call you following kids around on the internet like you did, I don't know. Could be any number of things. But if this person decided they wanted to leave the relationship, what you would do is you would suicide bait and browbeat and try to say that anything that they did that happened during the relationship that bothered you was the reason you were doing these things. You try to gaslight them into feeling like they either weren't enough or that they weren't paying enough attention to you. And what happens is you would just keep trying to bully these people into staying, even if them staying would only hurt them more and help you more. Because you're the kind of person, you don't see a relationship as something of mutual benefit for both of you in terms of your mental health, your emotional health, and obviously your physical well-being. You see a relationship as a reason as to why you can get everything. The other person just has to put up with it. And if someone dares question you at all or disagree with you, you'll just have them thrown out or excommunicated from whatever circle of friends the two of you share. Because that's the kind of little fucking parasite you are. You're the kind of person where if you had friends and they had friends and you had a group of friends that you both shared, you would do everything you could to make sure that this person is chased off of their friend groups and basically just treated like garbage, because that's the only way you can handle people being around you is if they just disassociate or just fucking drop this person completely so you can feel justified in your behavior. You strike me as the kind of person that does that. There are just two more things I want to address before I close this out. And don't steal the audio. I mean, actually issue rare rebuttals instead of just saying, wait, I'm right. One thing I want you to say, you don't understand how hard it is to witness people in your life who've been victims of CSA. You didn't know about it yet. And you realize the person who used to be this happy, fun, bubbly person start to become more and more reclusive, They start to completely cut contact with people. They start to talk less and less to everyone in the family. They start to become quieter and quieter until finally, like, you're lucky to barely get a passing glance from this person in your family. And then finally you have to get a phone call saying this person tried to take their life because they couldn't tell anyone what was happening to them for years. And then you're sitting by this person's bedside as they're in the hospital, comatose for 4 days. And you're hoping that this member of your family is going to wake up and be okay. You don't know how hard that is. To have to live with someone who goes through that. Because you say that the thing that made them do it, the crime that was inflicted upon them, that drove them to that point because they could no longer bear living with those memories. You're going to tell me and people around me, people that are survivors or people who know people that are survivors, that they don't have the right to be upset with the things you say when they have either experienced the reality of living with it firsthand or they've seen people in their life who live with it and how it impacted them, or in situations like mine, they see both. And they see bits of themselves and the survivors that they're friends with or related to because they understand that feeling of helplessness, that feeling that they cannot talk to anyone about it because they feel like no one will listen to them, no one will believe them. Like, you don't know how hard it is finding out that someone that you care about deeply, a dear friend of yours who you've been friends with the majority of your life, has attempted to destroy themselves because they felt like that was the way to cope with those feelings. And then you have to find out in like one of the worst ways possible that their second attempt ended up finishing the fucking job. You don't understand that feeling. Because you say those feelings don't matter. Because you're more worried about defending the people who commit those actions upon people. More so than understanding that not everyone is a good person. Not every person in the world is this kind individual that intends to do what's right. And you defend. Like, you defend people who do this shit to kids and teenagers. Like, bar none. You defend these actions because you don't care how the person's affected afterwards, just so long as the offender gets what they want. And when people are justifiably upset with that, you want to call them a bunch of hypersensitive reactionaries who are clutching their pearls and freaking out over nothing. No, this isn't some bullshit religious fundamentalist right-wing pearl clutching. These are people that are justifiably upset because they've either lived through it themselves, or people they love lived through it or didn't live through it. And don't pretend to care about women's rights, because women are the most prominent victims of these crimes. And yet, for some reason, you don't care that they are the most prominent victims of sexual assault. Because you're more concerned with whining about me. So, before you start pretending to be an advocate for women's rights, maybe you should understand that women suffer these crimes disproportionately compared to anyone else. Maybe you should actually try to understand what you're talking about before you talk about it, and shut up.